there is nothing straight and narrow about my journey at all. So when my generation, at least, back in the day when I was a kid, the assumption was that the career would be a nice straight line. You'd figure it out in high school. You'd get the necessary education. You would go from point A to point B, and you would retire at IBM after 35 years, or Bell. Yeah, no, not so much. So I was asked to tell my story. So, okay, maybe we won't go quite that far back. I went to the best high school in Etobicoke, Kipling Collegiate, had a great time, but they were not equipped to give me any insight into what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I went through to grade 13, and went off to Humber College. It was close to home, so I could live at home, and I took home ec, which basically is cooking, but without any of the glory of being a chef or anything like that. And I took it because, first of all, I would have loved to get into the very prestigious music program at Humber College, but there was no way I was ever going to get into that program. And home ec was the only other thing that was familiar and that felt safe. And so that's where I went. So 2-year diploma at Humber, and I started work at Eaton's. If anybody remembers Eaton's, they had a buffet restaurant in Sherway Gardens upstairs. It's been turned into 1,000 different stores now. Lasted 3 months and have not worked in my career since. So I started typing. How many people here don't know what that is? That's a computer without a brain, is what that is. And I spent many years working on one of those, typing spreadsheets that were gigantic. And that's the point when my mother said, you should learn shorthand and you can be a better secretary. Believe it or not, that says something. I have no idea what. But I knew at that point that I could not spend my life typing for somebody else. And all due respect to all of the great admins out there, I couldn't do it. So I went into car sales. Made perfect sense. Lasted 6 months. So we're talking the early 80s here, folks. And there was this thing in the early 80s that women were needed to be in car showrooms selling cars to women. So why they hired me and one other girl at the same time, we will never know. So then I went back to secretarial. Some temp, some permanent. Ended up on one temp assignment as a Canada Savings Bond coordinator in a stock brokerage branch, and got very lucky because the woman I was working for got me in as an admin manager in that branch. But hang on. Our branch was being closed, and we were shown this fancy newfangled computer system that was being implemented. So we're talking 1989. It ain't Windows. It ain't fancy. It's a plain screen. That's all it was. But they had branches across the country, and somebody was going to have to teach everybody how to use it. Okay, I can do that. Went back to school and got a certificate in teaching and training adults at George Brown because I had never trained anybody. I had never written any training. I hadn't written any documentation, and I sure as heck had never been a help desk. And for a while there, I was the trainer and the help desk and the writer and the publisher and the training planner and everything. So I spent 10 years on the road. I built a team. We did all of the writing and all of the planning. We would spend 6 months in the office doing all of the writing and prep, and then we would go on the road for 6 months. And then we would come back to the office and we would write the next upgrade for 6 months and then go back on the road. You do that for 10 years and you'll be exhausted too. So my boss at the time was very generous, and instead of firing me right there because I was exhausted and not doing anything, he moved me over to project manage AS400 systems. Now, AS400 systems are very important. They run a lot of things. They are completely invisible to the outside world. And I like people to be able to see what I've accomplished. And the projects I was being put on, first of all, I'm not a programmer, so I didn't really understand what it was we were doing, but I was invisible. You know, I was working on projects that would support a little team of 3 people in a back room somewhere, and they thought it was great, but nobody else knew what was going on. So I didn't like it, and I didn't understand it, and I did not enjoy it, and I got downsized. Now, as far as I know, I was the only one, so it was a very odd downsizing, But I think they were being nice and putting nice things on the paperwork so that I could get my EI. So it was time to, while I was doing that, I did get, have the opportunity to go back to Ryerson, and this was very exciting for me because I was at university, and I never thought I'd be able to go to university. And it was really cool because I got a certificate in project management that was run by the architecture department, which meant that I got to play around with projects around buildings, and that was really fun. I also went to Seneca for the first of 3 rounds to get some blueprint reading courses and some leadership training. And so after I left the software development, I went into office furniture. I was always the one that sat beside the photocopier and got it unjammed when the paper jammed. I was always the one, for some reason, that got tagged to plan the next department move. So I figured, okay, I've been kind of organizing these moves with furniture. I might as well go do project management on it. So I did that between the 2 firms. I did that for about 4 years. And then I got recruited. I had never been and have never since been headhunted. We won't mention the fact that it was a girlfriend of mine that was doing the recruiting. And it was with Habitat, and I had been volunteering with them for years. But this was a venture into the not-for-profit sector that you have to experience to really understand. Because working in not-for-profit, you have got to have a very singular devotion to that cause. And I believe wholeheartedly in Habitat for Humanity, but not to the point where I can give up my life for it. And that's what not-for-profit is like. But it was a great learning experience. So I think I project managed about 70 homes in Toronto in the 4 years that I was there. So it was quite an accomplishment, but guess what? Yeah, that ended. So then I was off work for a few months and got a job with a marketing company. I live here in Markham, and I got a job in Oakville. They do store fixtures and resets, or they did. I didn't know at the time they were in the process of going under. And I was last in, first out. Lasted 4 months. So I was out of work for a few months, and I did what I swore I would never do. I went into retail. I took a survival job at Lowe's and lasted 5.5 years until a new manager came in. And guess what? I kind of enjoyed it for the most part while I was there. But I had never imagined I would be there. And everything I did there, fortunately, tied into the construction and the store fixture work that I had been doing previously. So are you noticing something? We're talking secretarial, car sales, office furniture, construction, marketing, retail. Remember this nice, straight railroad track at the beginning? Yeah, mine's more like this. But this is when everything changed. When I left retail 2.5, almost 3 years ago, I realized that I could not keep trying to prove my value to HR recruiters who had no idea what I could offer and had no idea how to interview. My resume was viewed not as a breadth of experience, but as a lack of focus. And that was very, very frustrating that the value wasn't seen. And I already knew that there was no such thing anymore, because from personal experience, those were all permanent jobs. They were permanent until somebody decided otherwise. So now what? I had to get control of my career. I was in my mid-50s. I had to figure something out. And the idea of working for somebody else had really lost its appeal. So I looked back on everything I'd done. I realized I was the happiest when I was training. I liked the variety and the challenge. I have a little bit of squirrel. So I need to keep doing new things, different things. And I liked seeing people learn. Watching people that I had trained suddenly get it and see the benefit that it would have to them in their job was a lot of fun. So I did a little research, apparently not nearly enough, I have learned. And yay, I'm in business. I got a name. I went out and bought a domain. I slapped up a business page on Facebook. I slapped up a business page on LinkedIn. And I'm in business. Off we go. I did figure I probably needed some credibility, so I went and got a couple of Microsoft Office specialist certifications that nobody has ever asked about. I joined networking groups to learn from other entrepreneurs and to meet people. And did what I had to on social media. Not nearly enough, and still not nearly enough. So what have I seen so far? I get enough encouragement and positive feedback that keeps me going. Some days not willingly, but we keep going. And that my business concept is needed and does have an opportunity behind it. I was a little profitable in my first full year, depending on how you count the numbers, you know. And several clients have called me back for additional training, which is very gratifying. And my network still seems to be generating some referrals, both previous clients and just people that I have met. Oh, my mom needs you. Okay, off we go. But some of the challenges, the sophomore year, the sophomore syndrome has been very difficult. Finding clients. Where are they hiding, the ones with the money? I still struggle with that every day. And learning to sell through relationships, so I won't go out and pitch somebody. I need to get to know them, they need to get to know me, and eventually, because networking is a very slow process, eventually they do call. I'm also still got a lot to learn about digital media. Don't ask me about MailChimp today, or my website, or my contact form on my website today. But I also, in the last month, have recognized that I am just not making enough money yet. And I am now running a business and working 2 part-time jobs. So, current state, I have changed my target market. I started out focusing on older workers that were in career transition that needed new skills to get a new job, and working with seniors. Unfortunately, older 50-plus unemployed people don't have any money for training, and seniors are on a fixed income, and their funds are limited as well. So I am now targeting small businesses where there is a little bit more of a budget opportunity. The building of the network never stops. Doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing, there could be a client there, or the friend of a client, or the child of a client. So it's nonstop. I'm keeping in touch with former clients. I've had 2 clients from a year ago lately reach out and say, I need more. I'm ready for more now. And I am also working on envisioning a new virtual division where I will have training videos and training tip sheets and that kind of thing available online. So that's still in the concept stage. My advice to budding entrepreneurs, don't stop learning. It doesn't really matter what you're learning as long as you're exercising your brain and are willing to go out and get new information. Everywhere you go, you represent your brand. I don't care if it's the grocery store or the soccer field with your kids. You're representing your brand everywhere, and don't go anywhere without your business cards. Don't give up. I have wanted to on a number of occasions, but don't give up. Keep plugging, because, Edison had, 10,000 inventions before he came on the light bulb? 10,000 is a long time. Love what you do, but be ready for this. This is the day in the life of an entrepreneur. It'll be up one minute and down the next and back up and down, and it can be a tough haul, but it's worth it. Absolutely, it's worth it. That's it. Thank you.